I looks like I jumped the gun, Shelley. Sorry about that. Okay, any guests with us today?
Don't we have Jeremy Long? You have Jeremy on?
Yes, he's from the Reading Eagle.
Right.
Welcome, Jeremy. Great to have you with us. So moving on to old business, I see the first bullet item we have here is our signage and mapping proposal. Anne and Kathy, where do we stand?
Okay, well, I'll start and Ann can chime in. In our green infrastructure meeting, we talked about going ahead and getting the signs built, even if though we aren't sure exactly where all of them will go yet. But we do know what the first three types are that we want. We want a porous pavement so we can put it on the basketball court. We want a tree tree planting, specialized tree trench. So we can put it somewhere, maybe mimos. And we want a rain garden so we can put it, and we put it in the first rain garden that the city does, which we think is going to be at the horrible triangle on Museum Road, or is out that way anyway, out by the truck body and Berks Catholic, I think is out that direction, right, Bethany?
I believe it is Wyomissing Creek area, closer to the park.
Right. So, and we're not sure because that's changed. We thought, well, we just, it's going to be the same regardless of where we put it. So we ought to just get the signs done. Importantly, we need to push on that because we want to spend some of our money, or we won't be given more money. That's usually how it works. If you don't seem to need it, it's hard to justify getting it again. So we would like to get those signs made. Anne was going to try and see if we can get the graphic for those three ready.
Yes, so I did follow up on that. I reached out to the graphic designer down in Philadelphia, and they're still on board. I told them we'd be getting them a logo, so that's kind of what they're waiting on, and the language will read "Soak It Up Reading" instead of "Soak It Up Philly." I don't know, like Shelley, did you disseminate the sign information again? I know it was kind of old, so I thought maybe people would want it in their inbox.
Yes, I sent that just maybe 15 minutes, like 11:45, give or take.
So that includes, the different graphic types. I swung by Mimo's and he's on board. He says, tell them Mimo said yes.
Good. Well, then we are ready to do the applications to actually have the signs installed there, because
I told him that we would do everything. He wouldn't have to worry about anything, just provide the location.
great.
So
What I was thinking, and I don't, would ask what you, Anne, and especially Bethany thought, and Shelley, thought to get this together, maybe the best thing to do would be just to schedule a meeting for next week. That would be Bethany and whoever from Public Works is going to help us with this, actually making the signs, so that we could put a work order in and get an invoice and get that going. And that maybe if we all got together and get, if I could get Christian Crespo on too, or his designee, we had those group, then we could get the logo settled once and for all, and or at least, if not once and for all, at least in time for doing the signs.
Yeah, the graphic folks down in Philadelphia are ready to go as soon as they get the logo.
Okay.
So
we can get our end more coordinated and moving. What do you guys think? Especially Shelley and Bethany, that sort of our in-house people to help us get the public works sorted out. Bethany or
Yeah,
Yeah,
I would
I was-
rely on Bethany for that because I don't interact much with Public Works specifically on a day-to-day. They're in
Yeah.
a different building.
Right. I will send, and thank you for getting us the files, Ann. That's exactly what we were looking for.
Mhm.
I will get those files sent over to our sign department, and then I'll see what their availability might be to meet up with everybody
They
the next
me-
week. So
They told me that the signs that we want, they only do those in smaller form because they can get all the information on a small sign. The larger signs or medium signs are usually for stream restoration projects or things of that nature when there's so much more information. So they said that once we get the logo done, they would like it in EPS format or AI format, which is Adobe Illustrator, or I don't know what EPS stands for, but either of those forms is fine for the logo for them to easily include it in the graphics. Excuse me. And they said they said that they would just put a blurb at the bottom of the sign that the information, the signage was complimentary from Philadelphia Water Department,
that's
and
fine.
to give them credit.
Yep. I was going to suggest that. So good. Perfect. So Bethany, if you reach out to Public Works, then maybe you could contact Shelley could set up a Zoom meeting for us maybe and add Christian Crespo. And I'll send him a note explaining, because he knows that we wanted the logo for these signs when we started that effort almost a year ago. So he should, should be familiar with that. I've tried I've reached out 3 times by email and not been successful, and once by phone and not been successful. But I know he's out and about with the mayor all the time, because I've seen him, and every event I've gone to, he's been trailing along behind the mayor or one of the other administration officials. So I know he's really, really busy, but if we could just get him or somebody from, I don't know if Maya's still there or not. I've been sending it to him and to Maya, and I haven't gotten a response. So we need to cut through that.
It was kind of fun when I went to see Nemo, I just have to say, because he was teaching the people that worked for him what was in his front yard. He said, apparently we have the only tree trench in the city of Reading, and he was kind of proud of that.
Good.
And he was explaining it to a gathering of his employees around him. So
Awesome.
and he explained it pretty well. So I left the picture with him of what his sign would look like. So it was fun. It turned out better than I thought, because he didn't have such an easy time getting his permits in Reading.
Yeah. When you said a small sign, what dimensions are we thinking?
It's only 11 by something. It's small. But it gets the information across. This is probably the size it would be. I have the type here.
And where is that going to be exactly? Do you know where it's going to go?
At Mimo's?
Yeah. Do you have the location set yet?
He said, I told him it would be best near the sidewalk, because there's a sidewalk that runs in front of his property.
Oh, in the front of, okay, out front. Uh-huh.
The tree trench is right there, and then the sign would be installed actually within the tree trench. they have rocks as the ground cover. So it would be in the,
Because I think most of the traffic there in terms of people moving is really off on the side where the parking lot is, right? Kind of.
yeah, I mean, there won't be a whole lot of people that see it, but it's a really good example of a
Yeah,
working.
yeah. No, I think it's great. And that's the logical place to put it. Yeah, okay.
So,
Yeah, okay.
I mean, it'd be nice if, we had one in front of the city library or something like that, but we're fortunate that he's excited about it.
Yeah, I think it's a little off topic, but I think it's great because, people who want to do the right thing and do a little bit more than what they're required necessarily don't often get recognition or, I mean, I'm guessing it probably is, nice for him to sort of go, oh,
Well,
okay.
And it was what
Somebody's gonna acknowledge that I did this.
it was
A good model, I guess. is
something
what-
he had to do for the permit, just like reading the hospital's green roof. but they're proud of it once it's done. So
Yeah.
and
Well,
he's very proud of it. So
Well, and, no, it
did
shows
he
that-
have to do a tree trench or could he have done?
that was the best way to meet the
Uh-huh.
requirement.
Uh-huh. Okay. Well, I mean, even with that, yeah, I mean, this is all part of all of us, everybody in the community learning. Once, you get drug kicking and screaming into something and all of a sudden, or at some point it dawns on us, oh,
yeah, this is a good thing, and
it's a good thing. We're all better off for it.
yeah,
Okay.
we're all better off this way, right?
I will say he has the most aesthetically pleasing parking lot because he has some big shade trees now. I mean, they've grown, so it's nice.
Yeah, it is nice.
Okay, so those are the main things, and I guess our follow-up is to get a meeting to actually get the signage designed and made. It won't be as much as we thought, because we were thinking more of like a 2 foot by 3 foot kind of sign.
They said that they could do that, but it would involve them, if they enlarged it, they can, but it would, cost money to do the graphics for that.
Yeah.
So
I think
it would increase the cost.
yeah.
Well, I'd like to get a start the quickest and easiest way we can, I think. I don't know what everybody else, on the other hand, we want, we do need, we have money that we can spend right now, so. But
Yeah.
I mean, this all sounds like a plan. Shelley, from a timing perspective, I mean, I know we need to spend money by year's end, just like we did last year, and we didn't spend it. Are we already running into a crunch issue with the invoice that's going to be generated? I guess I'm just trying to figure out next steps. I mean, once we get an invoice here, what do we need to do with it? And, paid out of our allotment for 2021.
So in order for it to be processed for 2021, we have to receive it by 12/31. So if it bleeds into January, it will become a 2022 expense.
right, but it's just the invoice, so we have to like put a contract saying they're gonna build the signs, they're gonna install them and so forth, and we make a little contract that has that in it, as long as we submit that by the end of the month, the end of
Yep.
December.
Yeah,
Good.
and they would submit that to me and then I'll process.
Okay.
With the chair's permission, I will sign off and process unless David, you can also sign as the chair.
Okay.
We have a accounting process to go through.
I just wanted to make sure that the invoice itself didn't have to get to council for a vote before the end of December, because that probably wouldn't happen at this point.
Right,
I think given what's, outlined here going forward, I think that's a deadline we can meet if we.
Yeah, and council doesn't have to approve the invoice if it's less than a certain dollar amount. So just to process routine things, they don't have to approve all of those.
Good.
So that takes a step away.
Good.
so I'm thinking something else here, I'm thinking perhaps we should at least order 2 or 3 of the rain garden. and the porous pavement, because we know that we're gonna have those and we should just get them done now.
I agree. I think we should order more than 3 because the cost is less than 10,000. So.
Yeah, so if we got 3 rain gardens and 2 porous pavements, so that we can get the next basketball court that's done, signage
Yeah,
as well.
Gonna use it, so.
And also for public works, I mean, I think if they're knocking them off, it'd be a lot easier to do, 6 than do 3. I mean, just as easy to do 6 than to do 3.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
No, I agree.
Is that okay with
Well,
everybody?
so they're ending up being how much per sign, or don't we know?
We don't know. That's part of the problem.
I
I
just
mean,
thought
it's a few $100s. If it's a few $100s, maybe we should do a second tree trench, because maybe one of those will show up at some point.
right, hopefully, because I love them.
So, yeah, I mean, I think it's a good idea, Kathy, so we're not playing catch up every time. It's, oh, we got to produce another sign. We have a.
On these ones that we picked first because they'd be common and we knew there were plans to get more done.
And the other concern is, so we got a $10,000 allocation last year that we didn't touch.
Right.
If we only touch a very small portion of the 10,000 this year, the risk is council could come back and say, well, you didn't use the 10,000 2 years ago, and you only used $3,000 last year. So we're going to cut that 10,000 now back to 5. So, to the extent ordering additional signs will help us get closer to our allotment, I think that's a good thing, because we want to keep that allocation year by year.
And we will, we'll use it like to the purpose of what the mission is of this group.
Sure.
And that makes it really easy too, when next time we find out there is one going forward, we'll be ready. As David said, we are catching up and.
We'll have
What-
a sign in hand.
Okay.
Yeah. I think will get used. I mean, with a community of 90,000+ people, 3 signs is not a lot. So we obviously want to greatly expand the universe of signs that are out there. So they will get used. They're not going to get put on a shelf and forgotten about.
Right. Yep.
Even if we have to go out and put in a rain garden somewhere ourselves.
All right. Anything the signage proposal that we need to take care of?
Well, the graphics company, as soon as they get the logo, will need to, have a signature on their contract. Because she said the price I just got an email from her and she said the price would remain the same. I didn't read the whole email, but it looks like everything will be the same.
Which was how much, Ann?
I don't remember.
Okay.
You should have gotten that in the email, so it'll
Yeah, I
be
just didn't remember either, so
yeah.
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, if you need me to sign anything, I mean, just get it to Shelley, and she'll get it to me, and I can sign it, scan it, and get it back.
Okay, great. We'll just do that then. Do we need to have a vote on it or not? We already voted on it, didn't we?
I thought we did.
Yeah, I think so.
yeah, I think so.
You remember that?
Yes, I'm sorry, David. I'm nodding my head. I forgot that you don't see us all on gallery today. Yes, I believe that you all did already authorize this project and the spending that goes with it.
Yes. Okay, good. So I think we're then go.
Okay.
All right, so that wraps up the signage portion of the agenda. Moving on, the next thing I see here on the list is invasive plants and noxious weeds. Kathy, where are we?
Yes. So I think we're in a good place. Last time we talked about the yard waste ordinances and the state park ordinances, which would be amended to make it clear that you can't dump yard waste in not only parks, but also preserves and other public open spaces. And I don't remember whether we actually approved that. Because I think we were waiting to do them as a package, but I'm not sure.
I believe so. That's my recollection as well.
And so the second one we worked on in the Green Infrastructure Subcommittee and sent out, we had talked about the first draft and we had sent out a revised draft. Shelley sent it out a couple weeks ago. So hopefully people had a chance to look at it. So just really brief summary to get everybody back on the same page. The yard waste one is to address the changes to make it clear that yard waste is not helpful to preserved areas or parks, and actually is a nuisance and is illegal because those plants escape and damage the natural environment and create problems for native species and bring disease and pests in that would not otherwise proliferate. So that's the one that really was addressing the problems I talked about a lot that I had seen in along Oak Road on the Mount Penn Preserve. And then Shelley also has seen in some of our, in the park across from her. And we heard several other groups, and the Mount Penn Preserve people I talked with also had concerns at various places on Mount Penn Preserve, not just along Oak Drive. So that was the one piece. The other piece is about invasive species, particularly ones that are propagated intentionally or unintentionally, but on a large scale so that they could affect open spaces and agriculture. And this is a new law from 2017 that says that the Department of Agriculture may issue a control order for any of the invasive plants or noxious weeds that are listed either by them as an agricultural risk and hazard, or by DCNR as a conservation and natural resource damaging noxious weed. And if they issue such an order, a control order to either tell people to stop doing something or to actually go in and eradicate the purple loosestrife, for example, that they've planted all around their area and is escaping into a park, or even if it's not escaping into a park, because that's what Department of Ag. So anyway, if the Department of Agriculture issues a control order for one of these listed noxious weeds or invasive plants, then the law says the municipality has to help enforce it if the party doesn't comply. So we needed an ordinance that acknowledged our responsibility and said how we were going to go about doing that. And Shelley helped me, and we worked with Lester and Kyle. And what they wanted to do is have it be pretty simple and straightforward and set forth the basic responsibility, the basic outline of that law, and say that if the city, well, I'll go back, that if a control order is issued and the person doesn't comply, the city may enforce, and it will use what Lester wanted to use is the same process we use for shade tree violations. So we just use our existing enforcement procedure. And so we just incorporated that by reference. It just said that's what the section that section, I think it's at the end there, section 222. Go back up just a hair, Shelley, right here, I think. Where did I see it? Go a little farther down. Is that it? Right, stop. Oh no, never mind. I thought it was that. Okay. So here it is. I just took this part out and it's incorporated into the body of the actual text of the regulation. The one difference that I may not have highlighted is we have put in here that the city can issue a control order too, which seemed only logical, that not only, if Lester needs to, if we find that there's a big invasive species or noxious weeds, bamboo escapes from a yard because they are growing bamboo and then they're putting bamboo shoots over in a park or someplace, or even on somebody else's property, that the city could ask them to abate that, and we would use the same process. So we included an order either by the city or the Department of Agriculture. I doubt that would get used much, but it makes sense to have the authority to implement and use the same process. Did anybody have any questions about the ordinance? The lists are incorporated. Way to do that is just to reference the lists. And then the reason I took out current list is that we want it to be whatever list is at that time, at the time of the violation in place. So we just put the lists in, and then it actually evolves with the list, whatever is the official list. The penalties, when we first looked at this, we had inserted the penalties that the Department of Agriculture can issue, and we don't want to do that because there's imprisonment, there's huge amounts of money and so forth. And if they enforce, they can do that. If we enforce, we're just going to do shade tree, and that's like up to $600 per violation. And that's already something that the city has felt is appropriate for people doing things that hurt our natural our living natural resources, like our shade trees, and in this case, our park and preserve vegetation. So that's the penalties section. I personally took out that it's $600. I should mention this, $600 plus costs, and I don't want a default that people go to prison. I'm very much against a debtor's prison, and I just want to highlight that. So I don't see any need for us to send people to jail if they don't pay their fine for not eradicating an invasive species, because it's just become a big problem, people being incarcerated because they can't afford something. So that's the one change I made to the shade tree. I didn't put the typical old language in default thereof, 30 days in jail. Are there any questions with that?
Yeah, so I mean, I agree we shouldn't put people in prison, especially if they're for this, but I mean, in effect, you could do it and you get fined 600, you don't pay it. What's the recourse? Could it be that you need to participate in a cleanup? I don't know, some kind of community service. Of course, then if you don't do that, what's the recourse? I mean,
Well,
a fine,
Mhm.
if there's
Go ahead.
no, I mean, it's kind of like what the current administration the past administration and all Trump's cronies, they can do whatever they want. Nobody pays a price. So what the hell? I mean, I don't want to overthink this part of it, but it does strike me that, I mean, I think your contention is most people they're unaware of what they're doing. I mean, that doesn't apply to mattresses on Mount Penn or Neversink Mountain.
Well, and it's
I don't have, I mean, that's just a
Right.
question. If
yeah. Oh, well, that's always a problem with enforcement.
okay.
I think that, I mean, there are also costs. I mean, certainly the city can do what it can always do, which I think they could take the order to court and have the court could put someone in contempt for doing it. So
So there's the aggravation factor, which is an incentive, just so you don't have to.
I mean, David, do you have any thoughts on that? I mean, I guess
Yeah, I mean, I actually like your idea, Kathy. I mean, even if our ordinance is silent on it, if nothing is done and the city decides to, move forward and, ask the Court of Common Pleas to issue some sort of directive. I mean, I guess that is recourse that we would have.
yeah.
So. So there is some enforcement teeth that are there.
Yeah, and we are thinking that mostly it's people not realizing or in a weak moment getting lazy and dumping stuff or liking purple loosestrife and planting it someplace because they like it. And the penalty probably and getting an order was probably sufficient to get them to comply. Most people.
I think for most people, I mean, you said it's an educational issue. I mean, once they are made aware of what is happening, I think for the most part, this is going to be a tool to voluntarily, convince them that they need to comply. I can tell you the property owner at 1553 Mineral Spring has already jumped on this as a result of these educational things that you've now made me aware of. My neighbor who planted Japanese barberry all over the place 20 years ago has been blowing onto my property, and I've now got all of these Japanese barberry plants.
Mhm.
I actually put one out last weekend, and I've got a lot more that I need to address, but once you're made aware of these things, the responsible property owner is going to do the right thing.
Yeah, and I think the most likely thing within the city of Reading, other than the yard waste issue that we addressed kind of comprehensively, is somebody propagating something inappropriate for sale, like Japanese knotweed, because it's pretty. There are still people planting that in the country. There's a newsstand of it right near the Boy Scout trailhead sign that's just appeared on Oak Lane on both sides. And if you go farther up, like a quarter mile away, there's a yard that actually is rimmed with Japanese knotweed. So, and it used to be sold out of nurseries and so forth. So the issue most likely for the Department of Agriculture to go against and ask us to enforce would be against a nursery or something like that, where someone was selling and was propagating and selling. And there, this would work because a business wouldn't want, word to get out and wouldn't want to be considered in non-compliance and so forth. So I think that for the key things, we're probably okay in getting pretty good compliance without a big hammer.
So Shelley, procedurally, what needs to happen at this point? I don't think the EAC actually needs to vote on ordinance that we're submitting, but obviously we now need to submit this to, council for its consideration. So is that the next step? Is there any formal action that council would want us to take on these proposed ordinances?
So the next thing I would do, and I just looked back at the minutes from the last month's meeting, and you did approve the first two things that made the amendments, and then requested that they not be submitted until this third one was completed. So you would have to approve this one, and then I would send all three of them to our law office just to have them look at them before they go onto council's agenda.
That'd be excellent, I think, yeah.
All right, so at this point then, I will entertain a motion to approve the latest ordinance that Kathy just reviewed with us. Is there?
Second?
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any further comment? If not, all in favor, say aye.
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 Any opposed? Ayes have it, motion carried.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Kathy. A lot of work goes into these ordinances. You have been a godsend for us these past with your background in this area. I know I helped to work on, I think, the first one before you arrived, and I was very uncomfortable with the whole process. So
Yeah, it's a funny form of writing, and I just happened to have done it for like 15 years and
Good work,
supervise the
guys.
staff doing it. So it.
Yeah.
I'm pleasantly surprised when I start. I think, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this, and then I start to write, and I think of all the things that I've, the sort of all the checklist things that are back in my head because I did it for so long. So I'm happy to do it. It's nice to have a skill somewhere that you still can do.
I think you have more than one skill.
Thank you.
No, I concur. It's, it's great. It's really a lot of work. So
All right.
It's a
All right.
controversial.
Moving on under old business in the agenda. Next item is new member update. Shelley, anything for us?
I have nothing new, and I'm not sure if everyone was here when I mentioned it earlier. I did reach out after last month's meeting to Rebecca, and I have had no response. So I will try reaching her again.
That's, kind of unusual for a new member, to go two with missing a meeting. Hopefully nothing's, going on there in her life, but certainly we look forward to her being a part of the team here going forward.
I did speak to, and I can't remember how many, I spoke to someone last week who is interested, depending on some other things that may be happening in this person's life. But we should know in a couple of months whether, and this person is a city resident. But can't remember if we had any conversations about these two professors, the teachers at Penn State, who, neither of whom is a resident of the city, but some of you may have dealt with, but they both sound like people to be considered for a committee.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I mean, I think that the administration has made it clear, through its rejection of candidates recently, that what it is looking for are city residents. So
Yeah, I think.
keep that in mind. But, clearly we can use all the subcommittee help we can get. So if there are people out there who you think would be an asset for us, certainly let's make the connection and find a committee where their skill set might be useful.
Bill, do you think it would help if we sent a letter to them asking if they'd be willing to serve on a subcommittee and mention the ones that are ongoing right now? Because we've really sort of got three. We've got the green infrastructure, we've got the clean energy, and the code review for sustainability code review.
Yeah, I think, Kathy, I think that would be a good idea. I mean, are you offering to write the letter?
No, I can draft something. Something.
Their names and addresses, because I don't know them. And it's,
I don't think I do either, but I think I've been in groups where they were in a
Yeah.
group and
but I think,
failure, but I can't put my finger on it.
yeah, I think as as someone who's a faculty member or has been a faculty member at local schools, I think a letter to that extent, and then inviting them to attend one of our meetings to just hear a discussion. From what Lisa told me, they sound like they're, at least at the campus, they're involved in some really good stuff. So it'd be good to establish that relationship. I think that's a great idea. So if you're willing to do that, and then copy it, copy the rest of us so we have it, and maybe we could talk. Maybe one of us or I could follow up with a phone call, since Lisa gave me their names, just to talk to them. Or say they could call any one of us if they want to talk about it. You could certainly put in if they could call me. I mean, I'd be glad to speak with them.
Oh, I'd be happy to talk to them. Sure.
Yeah. So
I
I think it's a great.
I'll just do, is it okay if I just do it as an email kind of letter? Do you think? You would think more formal one?
No, I don't think so. I think.
Okay.
I think,
Yeah, I just need the contact information.
I can dig it up and send it again.
Okay, great.
It probably was in an email I sent to Michelle, but you want me to send it to you again? I'll find it and get it.
Yeah,
to you.
if you could just.
Yeah, you don't have to dig for it. Yeah, I'll get it to you. Yep.
I
Okay,
think, Bill, you only sent me their names to see if they were residents. I don't have contact information.
Okay. All right. I'll get that. I'll send that to everybody.
All right, great. And that email certainly can be used as a template then going forward if we identify others who live outside of the city, from time to time, and we want to reach out to them, and we think they'd be a good fit on a subcommittee. We won't have to reinvent the wheel. Okay, moving on the agenda. Bill, it looks like you're up next. Environmental Summit. Any update for us?
No. I think we're still in a holding pattern. It feels to me like getting Nicole filling that position again is what is the key to moving ahead. you know, one of the things that came out of that is this conversation about looking at the ordinances and the codes and finding where we can make them reflect what, you know, everything else that's going on in current reality on the planet. So, I mean, I guess that's part of this discussion, and Kathy attended that presentation. I don't know if anybody else did. I did review your notes from that, Kathy. But before we get into that, so in terms of, I don't know if anyone can shed light on the process of hiring a new sustainability coordinator, if interviews have been conducted, if there's, I mean, I don't know, does anybody know where things stand with that?
Bethany shaking her head. Are you willing?
I
to-
see Bethany nodding.
Interviews are in process.
Yay.
And I guess it's awkward position to be in, but is there any indication of a timeline of when this is gonna?
That I don't have.
Okay.
The interview process has commenced.
You know, correct me if I'm wrong, but it feels to me like until that person is in place, I'm not sure what we can be doing at this point. Except focusing on this ordinance aspect. I mean, if there's something else that or we should be doing that I'm missing or forgetting, let me know.
We will. But
Yeah.
I think one of the good projects to do in the meanwhile is to start looking at the ordinances.
Yeah. So Kathy attended this presentation and shared some notes, thorough notes. And we have a meeting set up for December 7th.
Yes.
That meeting will be with some of us and some folks in Public Works. Maybe this new person, but maybe not. So is there any discussion about either what Kathy circulated at this point, or maybe we could talk about, if we could spend a couple of minutes, if the time allows, we could talk a little bit about the structure of that meeting on the 7th and what should be on that agenda. I'm not sure who's.
We have some time. Why don't we go ahead with that?
What's that? We've
Yeah,
got.
we have time for that discussion.
I mean, I'm not sure who's developing the agenda. I'm not sure who's convened the meeting, if it's us, or if it's Public Works. If it's
We asked Bethany to help us with that. Originally, Shelley was going to do it and she wasn't available, and then we had to reschedule the meeting anyway. But if Bethany can have the time, I think she's ideal to sort of convene it for us.
Well, I guess she has.
Yeah, she did. She started to put it together, and
She convened.
if she has a draft, I think she had a draft agenda, right, Bethany? Did I say-
I put a short, like this is what the meeting is about. So
Right.
the idea is to really formulate what tools are needed to do this review, the scope of the project that we're just doing a review and identifying at this stage, any ordinances that may need updating. And then the next stage will be to prioritize getting those updates. But the first stage of this is really to, and Tuesday's meeting on the 7th will be to figure out what tools we need to do the project, who's going to be responsible for what the deliverable is, and then and going through the review process and what everybody's looking to do. So it's just to kind of get a
And I
setup
would
and
just-
organized with it.
And I would just add that the notes I made, my thought was not that we should be adopting all of those things, but rather that would provide some food for brainstorming and thinking about kind of some of the options. I know I wasn't aware of some of the things municipalities are doing that were on that list. And some of them I don't think apply to us at all, but some of them really might help us address some things that we haven't done yet, or that we're not happy with how it's working. So I would want to make sure there's clear, I'm not saying that those things need to be done. I'm just reporting that here are some of the things that municipalities are doing to make their communities more sustainable. Are there any that really appeal? And we should just kind of tick some of those, make little stars by them as we're going through our current code to see whether we think something, we might be able to borrow something from some of the other municipalities that have found particular issues to be something they want to do or want to address more.
Yeah, and then in that list of stuff you had, I mean, some things are more appropriate to us than others.
Right.
Given the the dominant way.
Yeah, and I think what we could do is sort out, maybe what I should do for it is take out the ones I don't think are applicable. I wanted to share the whole thing with everybody.
Yeah, well, I mean, every one of these has some applicability. Let's just talk about the meeting, and maybe we can have a few minutes to discuss your document. So let's talk about this meeting. So we're convening it, right? I mean, this meeting is happening. We're the ones who suggested that we would do this. So and again, Bethany can correct me if I'm wrong. So we will in a sense run the meeting, right? One of us will act as a facilitator for that conversation. Is that accurate to say?
Yeah, I think so. Yep.
Okay.
And I think it's, David and you, Bill, and I volunteered for this committee, this
Right.
subcommittee. I'm not sure if anybody else wanted to be on it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think my feeling at this point was that this first meeting should just be members of the EAC and
Right.
whoever's identified from the city. But I think one of the agenda items should be a discussion of expanding it. I mean, not to 20 people, but there may be either locally or not locally, some people who have expertise looking at ordinances. And or at least in particular, go ahead, Shelley.
Keep in mind too, that as we go through these, you're going to pull the city's professional staff in as well. So we don't necessarily need a whole lot of outside experts, although we could use a few. What we really are going to need are the experts who work with this and use these rules day to day and what they'd like to see, what they think would work, what they don't think, that using their expertise and their experience as well. And that should definitely be part of what we talk about that first meeting.
Yeah. No,
Yeah, maybe we can actually sort of identify who's the person who most works with energy efficiency and conservation, who handles that.
Right.
Sort of some of the key things to make sure, so we could come out of the meeting with key contact people that we know who to send ideas to.
Yeah, so maybe a way to approach it would be, and this might take a little bit of preparation ahead of time, is what are the areas that we think we need the expertise, so we're not sort of like fishing around theoretically at that meeting, and then say, is there somebody on the city staff? Because if there's somebody in the city who can address a particular, like energy efficiency, I don't think we should overburden ourselves or the committee or anybody else out there with bringing in extra people and just spinning wheels. And the more people involved, the longer it's going to take to go through the process. So maybe using your list as a starting point, Kathy, we could identify between now and the meeting. I think one of the things Bethany said, and I did want to ask her, she said, review and identify the ordinances we want to look at. I don't know if Bethany meant the particulars in each ordinance or actually, the property maintenance code, the IBC, which is the building code, the zoning code, the planning. I mean, are we talking about the each code or each section of each code at this stage? When you said identify ordinances, you're saying identify which ones are there that we need to look at in terms of the.
Yeah, I think everybody also needs to consider that when we talk about the code in my practice, it's all the city's laws in one big giant code, which is thousands and thousands of pages long and contains, dozens of specific chapters. So I think that's part of what Bethany was getting at too. We don't necessarily have to do the entire code, but Bill, to your point, let's pick out property maintenance, zoning, the building codes, some of those bigger ones that are impacted more by the sustainability issues rather than every code that's in the code of ordinances.
Right.
Maybe
right,
we
you're
could
right.
go through the content table of contents and sort of check off the areas, the chapters that we think probably have stuff that should at least be looked at to see
Yeah,
if it's
yeah.
old and or burdensome or creates
Right.
barriers that we don't
Right.
think are helpful or where places where we could put incentives in.
And yeah, and it, may end up being a half dozen, maybe a dozen chapters, or some of them that, I can't, we may have to pick and choose and say, well, these are the ones that, like the building code.
Yeah,
property maintenance,
that's
those are the
critical.
ones where we're gonna have some impact. Other ones will go, oh, we'll miss some stuff now. We can come back to it later. So, Shelley, is that like, could you send us the table of contents and we can each sort of take a crack before the meeting, Kathy? And
I
Yes,
think that'd be great.
we don't have a printed copy of that code anymore because it updates electronically much easier than the printed. So I will send you a link to where the document is on the internet, and then you can browse through the table of contents or click around and see what's where, just to kind of get a little more familiar before that first meeting.
okay.
Yeah.
But I feel like, maybe that first meeting is just going to be kind of getting to know who we are and just general conversation. But if we actually want to start identifying what happens next, maybe we need to look at it and sift through that table of contents first. Maybe not, maybe that's jumping ahead too much. Maybe just having that and being prepared to talk intelligently at the meeting about, a round table. One of the agenda items could be doing just what Bethany said, which is kind of identifying which chapters are we going to look at, and that can suggest what gaps there may be on the committee, the subcommittee, to really move forward.
Yeah, I do think it makes sense for us to review, go to the link, review them, identify the ones we think are probably relevant, and we can come to the meeting with that list. You said that we did that much effort. And
Okay.
are there some that don't belong in here from what you know? Don't belong on the list? Are there
Okay.
some we missed?
Okay.
that you think
Okay.
definitely should be looked at? And that, that engages them with, while showing that we do intend to do some of the point is for us to do some of the legwork that nobody has time to do.
Yeah, right, exactly. Okay, so
I agree. Actually, I think that would be really helpful.
okay, all right. And should we just look at it and come to the meeting with that, or should we communicate with one another and come up with a
I think we
Or
should come up with a single list.
okay,
So we
Okay.
should communicate, anybody that gets to it and does it should send it to Shelley.
okay,
And then she can just put down whatever contributions we have that are just, here's what
Okay.
we think, what we came up with as a group of possible chapters that might need attention. And that gives
Well,
us
why
a
don't,
place to have that discussion.
so I'm assuming it's going to be you, David, Bethany, if she's got time, and I. We're the ones who are going to look at it. Maybe we should just communicate with one another and say, these are the ones that look like they make sense.
Okay, and send it, yeah, all right.
Kind of put one together for us. Maybe it'll be a compilation of, you come up with 3, I come up with 7, I don't know. And then we'll send that to Shelley and then.
Send that to Shelley, yeah, do the work,
Um,
do that work. I think that
all
makes
right.
sense.
So that'll be one of the agenda items, is
Okay, and the
reviewing.
meeting's the 7th of December,
Yeah,
so
we
we
have
need
2
to
weeks.
do it by the end of next week.
I think, yeah.
So
Let's-
that would be what, is that the 3rd-ish?
The 3rd is Friday, yeah.
Yeah. So we should put a that we should communicate with each other by the 3rd, so we have something to send to Shelley that she can tee up for the meeting.
Okay. And I will, I guess this falls under, well, I don't know, this is a separate subcommittee. We don't have a, so let's just proceed like that for the moment.
Well, it came out of the summit, so I think you're the lead.
Oh, okay, okay. All right, so this is the Clean Energy Subcommittee, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, so one of the things that, I don't know if this is relative to the subject, but I think it is, and that is making sure procedures are in place to get the most out of the package that was just passed at the federal level, the transportation package. And, you know, sort of coupling, as far as the green energy, like, I'm sure I know there's money in there, and how best the city of Reading can utilize those funds when it comes to coming up with a procedure and putting things in place that make it, I guess it doesn't have to be shovel ready, but like projects that are viable and meet the criteria of what the money is being allocated for.
Well, I think that'll be, I'm assuming that's going to be one of the charges of the person who becomes the sustainability coordinator. Be
There's
identifying and
moving
kind of
parts.
What's that?
There's so many moving parts, and how best to facilitate the ordinances and comprehensive plan and everything that we could best utilize the funds to the greatest extent.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not saying that person on their own in a vacuum will do it, but I'm assuming, you know, we'll nudge and we can help that process. I know with the American Rescue Plan money, there was a public meeting at the Centro Hispano. And
There's another one. I think there's meant to be another one.
Yeah,
For
there's
that-
another one coming up mid-December.
For that first batch of funding or for the infrastructure
Yes.
money?
First
that.
batch.
No, for the first batch.
Now, was anybody, I didn't go, we're still not attending those kinds of things, but was anyone there? I did speak to someone who was there from the press who he was pretty impressed with the turnout and with the kinds of things people were saying. I mean, it didn't feel like a community development block grant meeting where nobody from the public shows up. It felt like the public was there. I think the choice of I felt everything about it felt like they were taking the right steps. That in fact it was at Centro Hispano and
I think one of the largest pieces of a summit is to gather like groups that can help facilitate the goals that we have. And, you know, for example, the Smart Growth Alliance at the county level, and just all those groups that are already working on this, even the Water and Sewer Association, all of those groups are working on different parts of what we would be interested in seeing in Reading.
Right, and I think that's the point, is that we want to facilitate getting everyone familiar with what everyone's doing and
Right.
what kinds of things, you know, they all, you know, awareness of things that are in process, are happening already, and the things that people are hoping to have happen, and getting as many people involved as we can.
And I mean, I think everything you've said is valid, and it really, we need to think about it, talk about it, figure out how to, you know, move those kinds of things along. But I think the purpose of this ordinance review committee, I think it's a narrower focus, and I think it needs to stay narrow. Otherwise, we'll just spend, it's going to be a challenge as it is.
Yeah.
But I think we
Sort of
need.
like, I don't know if everybody saw the chat thing that Scott gave us. He's saying that he's pretty sure the city hasn't adopted anything newer than 2012 in property maintenance, and the building and trades are even older. So, you know, and in-house people are working on them, but that was sort of the point of, can we help identify some critical areas and places where taking out the hurdles that are in there that aren't necessary and putting in some incentives to encourage more sustainable approaches could be most useful. So
And
that's,
standards of practice are so important. You know, these are the standards we expect and would expect any engineering firm or designer to follow, or, you know, person doing some type of implementation to follow in order to achieve these goals.
Yep.
And, you know, possibly get some more money.
Well, you know, I'm familiar with the IBC, although I haven't looked at it in about 5 years. And I'm not sure when that was adopted. It might have been, I mean, it was adopted statewide. That's the International Building Code, which every time it's revised is folding in sustainability guidelines. I mean, it's slowly absorbing what LEED has promulgated.
okay.
But
Scott's
I mean,
telling us that the new IBC books have added a lot to sustainability, just like Bill said, and he's saying that it gets reviewed every 3 years.
3 years. Okay, so you know, these are the things that we'll hopefully the chief building inspector can tell us what things are already in there. But when we get into the weeds, I think that covering so much of that, I think we look at LEED and a couple of the other sustainable rating systems for viewpoint. But if we could just stay on preparation for this meeting. So we'll look at the table of contents and come up with a, I see Scott's asking, I didn't know we had a chief, we did not have a chief building code officer at this point. No, I have no new news.
Oh dear.
So we'll look at that in terms of trying to identify parts of the code. I think part of the discussion will be, you know, what are the gaps in the committee? Where do we look, either generically or specifically, what city employees city professionals can fill the gap, and where do we need to look elsewhere? And as Bethany said, the tools that we need and the deliverables. So we should prepare an agenda. Bethany, you in a sense did put together an agenda. You had a list of things that we would talk about. Do you want to do that, or you want one of us to take that and build that into an agenda for the meeting, or what would be your pleasure? You know, I'm gonna put something else on your plate if.
Or I can.
I can go ahead and set up the agenda and send that out. That's fine.
Okay. Well, why don't you do that? If you could do that as a draft, and then David and Kathy and I can look at it.
Mhm.
And then again, that's also in preparation, and we could maybe get that together by Friday, so that could be circulated to the people from the city that are going to be part of the meeting, so everybody kind of sees what the agenda is.
Yeah, I'll send that out early next week, because, you know, we have the holiday this weekend, and so I don't want anything sitting in the bottom of inboxes.
No, I agree. I think we can, you know, I think we can all turn our attention to this next week. And then I mean, I don't know if there's a specific item that should be on the agenda that we haven't mentioned. But if not, we can, you know, among the four of us, we can think about it and kind of throw it in. Kathy, you're muted. You're muted. Kathy, you're muted.
I was just thinking what we should have when we send the agenda out, include that this is, you know, a request too for anything else that they think we ought to make sure we go over at the first meeting.
Okay. But during the course of the week, next week, we the EAC folks will take a look at it and then come to agreement and then get it out to everybody else who's going to be at the meeting. Okay. And Bethany, you know, in terms of chairing the meeting, I mean, I don't want to step on anybody's toes. You could facilitate the discussion if you want to. You're the most informed.
I have been asked to facilitate.
Okay,
Good. Yay.
yeah, that makes me happy.
Stephanie.
I have threatened to use a stopwatch.
Okay,
That's fair.
good. All right. I don't know. I mean, I think I felt like I just wanted to cover those things. I think we'll.
Yeah, I think we're in good shape. We've got some
Yeah.
things
Okay.
to do and get ready and
I think it'll be a good over the winter before we get busy again with the spring project and really help
Yeah.
us
Yeah.
kind of align so that way we're not caught surprised. Is really the idea.
And Michelle, just to be clear, that whatever it is, the comprehensive book of ordinances, everything is in there, zoning, planning, it is the full, yeah, okay. So once we look at that, there's nothing that's missing from that in terms of,
Right, and like I said, it's an electronic link, so you'll be able to open the chapters and skim through, look at as much as you want or as little as you want.
All right, good discussion, Bill. Thanks for leading that. The other two items on the old business part of the agenda, the ones on me, plastic bag ban, I simply have not gotten to that. I did receive the additional materials that I need to review, and then I need to convene a subcommittee to start moving that discussion forward. My recollection on the Act 2 database is that we were going to hopefully rely upon an intern or someone to help with that. And that is simply, I guess, a function of the city collecting, for instance, environmental covenants that are copied to the city as part of any Act 2 cleanup process. We simply need to have a way of, collecting all of that, making sure it's searchable. This issue actually comes up in my practice periodically. I had one recently where we were looking for an Act 2 release of liability letter for a very visible project that occurred 20 years ago. Nobody can seem to find it, including DEP. We did a record search at the department. They don't have it. We know the letter was issued. So we thought, what about the city? Because the city should have been copied on that letter. City doesn't have it either. So this would certainly be welcome. And I think Liberty Environmental would probably assist us with that effort. So we'll keep that on the old business part of the agenda, but there's certainly nothing new there to discuss today.
the only thing, I would add is that I think we should be thinking about this as an environmental justice initiative, because one of the biggest things that people are continually concerned about, and because they don't know and don't know how to find out, they think the worst, that all the areas in the poor neighborhoods and places where the minorities live and so forth are all contaminated and nobody's looking at it. And I think the first thing we can do, and the truth is, it's very hard to find out, because we don't have records that show the sites where where we know there was contamination and someone did something about it, and it's supposed, and there are conditions and standards that are supposed to be met. So I really think that we should package this as well as an environmental justice effort. That's what that data is important for the city as a whole. It certainly is important for all the consultants and lawyers who need to know it too, but it begins to build trust that there's a place you can find out whether the property was contaminated and whether they're keeping up their duties on that. I think we should add Superfund sites as well, but the Act 2 is particularly hard to get a handle on. Superfund exists other places, but the Act 2 things, it seems to me, ever since we started getting copies, I thought, ooh, where did these go and where are they being kept? And we need to make sure, yeah, nobody knew. And that was true even when we had, even when Deb Hoag was here. That's probably someone we should also talk to, is talk to Deb about her experience with them, because when we talked to her, when she was the environmental officer, she said, no one knows what to do with them, so they're sending them to you, to the EAC.
Yeah. Yeah, you know, Superfund sites are few and far between in the city.
Right.
There are not many, but obviously there are, you know, dozens and dozens and dozens of properties in the city that have been through the Act 2 process. Most of them are projects where what's called site-specific remedies were selected, which means there are engineering controls in conjunction with attaining those standards, whether it's a soil cap that needs to be maintained. And that's really our big concern, because, you know, obviously everybody in the city's on public water for the most part. I think there are maybe 1 or 2 supply wells, not for drinking purposes, but there may be 1 or 2 supply wells in the city. That's really not the issue. The bigger concern is simply, you know, soils that may be impacted, and what protections on those projects were put in place to make sure that, you know, human health is adequately protected. I'm wondering, I mean, given the environmental justice bent that you raised, you know, Kathy, if there are any federal funds that could assist with, you know, an intern to help us with that indexing. Don't know, but maybe it's something to look into.
Yeah, I bet there is. I know we are identified as an environmental justice community, both
Right.
locally and by the state.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's a really good idea.
Let me reach out to some of my contacts at EPA to see if they're aware of any funding that might be available to us along those lines. That's a really good idea. Okay. All right, in the 15 minutes or so that we have left, if we move on to new business, there are 4 new items here that we need to introduce, and it looks like we probably won't get through them all, but maybe we can at least touch on all of them to kind of lay out a plan for moving forward. Shelley, I guess we're at that time of the year where we need to start thinking about our meeting schedule for the following year. So anything you want to add other than, I mean, typically we keep the schedule the same. You know, we're obviously in the middle of COVID still. So I would certainly think that for the short term, we're probably going to elect to continue holding meetings virtually. You know, hopefully that will change at some point in the spring that would allow us to go back to in-person meetings. But for now, I keep seeing in the Reading Eagle every day that the numbers continue to go up again. Anything else that we need to be doing right now, Shelley, with respect to the meeting schedule for next year?
No, if everybody wants to keep it as is, that's an easy thing for me then. So then just to reiterate, there's no meeting in July. The August meeting is modified, and then there's no meeting in December.
So does everybody agree that we'll simply keep that in place for next year? Hearing nothing, I think you can assume, Shelley, that we're good to go with the same schedule for next year. That's an easy one. Good.
I just will add that the person I did speak to, the potential member, was pleased to hear that we're doing this via Zoom because of this person's work situation. Just would make it easier to attend meetings. So,
and you know, I'm even thinking going forward when we're back to in-person meetings. I actually serve on the Berks County Conservation District's board. And although we're now back to in-person meetings, there are a number of members, me included, who wanted to keep an option of being able to attend virtually for those times when we have difficulty attending. And they're now doing that, and it's working out well. So, you know, I think that even when we are back to in-person meetings, we may want to consider at least having that Zoom option for folks who are unable to attend in person.
I like that.
Yeah.
I think that makes sense.
Um,
All right, so I guess we already took care of bullet number 2 here, creation of a code review committee. So we don't really need to focus any more time on that. I don't know anything about the next item, which is chat with the EAC public meetings. Who can educate us about that?
Bill, do you want to, or shall I?
I'm trying to remember what it is. Is this what came up from the green
Yeah,
infrastructure?
when we were
Committee?
brainstorming
And
the
what
green
Stephanie,
infrastructure.
what Stephanie had suggested, yeah.
Mhm.
I'm going to defer to you on that one.
Okay, so we were brainstorming about how can we do outreach better, and it's a problem everyone has, trying to get to more of the community and do more listening, get an opportunity to do more listening and hear what people need and want and wish would happen in the community that we could help promote. So it sort of got wrapped up with, we were thinking about needing an additional, needing a meeting for the whole clean energy and sustainability plan going forward. No one really thought we could afford a whole nother meeting. So we were thinking we might keep it contained within green infrastructure, but have the meeting be, have the first half hour of the meeting be an opportunity to talk with us, to have just an open forum available, to talk with us about whatever agenda items we would have teed up for that meeting. And we're thinking of doing that maybe both for green infrastructure, but especially for the main focus was on as the sustainability plan and clean energy goes forward. We want to be part of bringing people in to talk about it, in addition to whatever the city does as its public participation. So we were thinking of having that and having topics be announced and having, like, say two of our board members, so everybody doesn't have to do it, to have 2 of the board members be available to talk with people about it for, say, I mean, this is what here's brainstorming, and so there were several ideas, but what I recall is thinking about either having a separate meeting available, but just 2 people would attend and be there to answer questions and to listen to things people wanted to talk about, to be concerned about, to have issues that were included. So that was what the chat with the EAC was about, and not have a whole separate public meeting going forward, but to have a couple people identified who'd be willing to do that once a month.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great idea. I mean, I've always thought that it would be great if we had enough staff on, members of the EAC with time on their hands. It would be great perhaps once a quarter to identify a different quadrant of the city to kind of take what we do on the road. Where we've got a Q&A session where, we're outlining what the EAC is all about. You'd identify first maybe 1 or 2 key people who live in that community, who appreciate what we do, and they could be used as a resource to corral some of their friends and neighbors to attend such a session. And we'd simply go around from year to year to different quadrants of the city to sort of drum up interest in who we are, and to hopefully get some folks who could partner, who'd be willing to partner with us. Obviously, we lack the people to do that. But what you're proposing, Kathy, I think is a great start, along those lines, because outreach is clearly a big part of what we do. There are times when we do outreach well. There are times when, we all get busy and that function kind of falls by the wayside. So I think what you're proposing is a great way of resurrecting that outreach component of what we're charged to do in the ordinance that created the EAC.
As I recall, you mentioned like once a quarter. I think we did talk about maybe not doing this every month.
Right. Yeah, I think it was every other month we were thinking of having it. And we were thinking
So,
it at the same time as a, but before or after a committee meeting, so that
Yeah.
it
Mhm.
didn't make a whole separate event for the people involved. So that like we'd have our regular meeting, but what we would announce is that we'd have a half hour to just as an open forum on a topic.
yeah, I think one of the, and it was probably Stephanie's suggestion, I think,
Yeah.
to maybe do this, kind of evolved from, I think in a sense, the model was when Brandon participated in one of our meetings. And I think, you know, in a sense, the beginning of his of the meeting was what we're talking about. I mean, he kind of talked about his background and stuff, and then we told him about the AC. And then I think where a little bit it got a little bit awkward was he started participating in our business meeting, and
Right.
well,
Yeah, and that's that. Yeah, and that's
it
not,
didn't quite
that
work
wasn't
as
as
well.
much fun for him, and it didn't help our meeting.
No,
get done.
not, not that he was,
Yeah.
not that he was a disruptor, but I think this would be a way of making it clear to people that, and they could stick around and listen to us conduct business, but the point of having them there is a listening in general, not speaking to the agenda necessarily, but
Right,
talking about what we're doing.
right. And I guess the thing I left out was, we also, Stephanie was talking about having a blog. And
That was part of it, yeah.
as part of this, to bring people in. And that's where we talked about trying to have an intern or a part-time person to do that kind of thing, to help us with this outreach, and also to do something like the Act Two list. Someone who is interested in IT savvy and interested in outreach and community sustainability, that, like Brandon seemed to be, that we could have, and we could spend some of our $10,000 to like spend 5 of it that we hadn't earmarked for signs, that we could spend that on a person to help us get those things done and done well, and in a way that would then invite people who are on Facebook and Instagram and so forth to know that we're gonna have a chat session, and wouldn't they love to come and tell us what they think? So and then Shelley did some, and is that a separate item? I forgot whether it's a separate item on the agenda, but Shelley did some homework on that. And she reached out to legal to see whether we wanted it to be an internship that we would offer, or whether it would be just a part-time position with the city, with the EAC. And the legal advice was it'd be a lot easier for us to make it a part-time position, as I understood it. And we probably need to follow up with that and see what we have to do with HR to do that.
I think he recommended actually that it be like a contractor,
Right, and now, yes, not a position.
not an employee
No, a
or a
contract.
position, because then that comes with all of those strings.
Right,
But
we just need to
be
write
like
a contract.
private-
Yeah, that's what it was. I misspoke. We want it to be an independent contractor, and we would just initiate a contract to get someone to do that. But I don't know what kind of, I don't know to what extent we are bound to do, to publish the availability or to look for.
Yeah, unless things have changed in the last 5 years, if it's under a certain amount, I think you can identify someone who fits the bill or whatever, and
We don't have to.
correct me if I'm wrong, Shelley, but if it's a small amount, you don't have to go through some kind of public procurement process, right?
That's what we need to know.
And she's muted.
And when you look at the Code of Ordinances in the purchasing policies, you'll see that's all spelled out.
And how much is it?
But what did
believe-
you say?
I believe it's less than 10,000.
Right.
Okay.
It used to be under 25, but council got aggressive about it. But if we're talking about less than that, and I think we can, I'm not sure who has to approve it, but it does not have to go through some cumbersome review process, as I recall. But I saw that Bethany had her hand up at one point. Did you have something did you want to say something about all this before?
Yeah. Penn State Sustainability Institute pairs classes with municipalities and NGOs and other associations. And there is a class that might be willing to help us with setting up a newsletter/blog in the spring semester. So starting in February of 2022, is that something that you would all be interested in working with a class to help us develop that initial product? And then basically we'll have a template and then we'll be able to just repopulate it as we go. Is that
So-
something you'd all be interested in?
Here's my general feeling about that. I think those things are great, but they really are designed for the benefit of the students. Sometimes they work well if you have a paid staff at the entity that can work with them. But I think for a bunch of volunteers to work with a group of students, I think my gut says that in order to really get what we want out of it, we're going to have to spend a bunch of time. I think the opportunity to hire someone, maybe this contractor works with this group of students.
Yeah,
and they
that's
could
what
do
I was going to
something
say. If we
mutually
could get
beneficial.
someone, yeah,
I guess what I'm saying is I don't think it's one or the other. I think maybe we can do both. I think if there's a group of students, and it may very well be that institute is run by one of these two people whose name was given to me by these.
This is out of Penn State, Maine.
What's that? Oh, at Maine.
Yeah, this is out of Maine. But she
Oh, well,
works
that
with,
changes things.
well, she works with all of the classrooms, with all of the satellite schools
Oh, so this is from Maine.
throughout the Commonwealth. And we do have them working on some other projects, research capstone type projects. This would be a capstone for a class project.
I think it would be great if there's either someone on staff now or someone, we can get somebody as a sort of an independent contractor who one of the things they would do is work with this. You know, we could certainly participate, but I think you really need someone who's going to be able to put the time in to work with the students.
Yeah,
For
of
them
course.
too, to get benefit out of it. Otherwise, it just becomes a hollow exercise. And I've been on both sides of those kinds of things, and they sound good on the outset, but it really depends on how they're set up. But I think what the discussion of this listening or the public meeting thing and the hiring someone, I think the two are related, because I think the whatever's going to be put in place to draw people to the meetings and then to follow up if people do come is going to be a function of having someone who can shepherd that process through. So I think the two are related. The idea is a good one. I think the connection to the blog was a key part of what Stephanie was suggesting. And Stephanie is an individual whose resources we haven't really exploited to the extent we could. I think she's willing to do stuff, and if we kind of choose the right things, and I think anything that involves maybe the blog and writing, I think she'd be willing to help with. So
yeah, she sounded like she was willing to put some effort into a blog if we wanted
but
to do
we
one.
need to make sure it's worthwhile, and I think what we just talked about puts us in that direction. So what would need to happen to start the process of identifying someone and bringing them on as an independent contractor? I mean, is Brandon in the pipeline? Stephanie mentioned David Nazar, just throwing out names. I mean, maybe there's another person out there that should be talked to. I think it'd be great if it's a city resident. I think it should be a city resident.
Should, yes, it should.
What would be the next step? I mean,
I think we need to write what we want.
okay?
Need to write a proposed request for proposal type contract. We don't have to do the request for proposals, but I mean, just saying
Right.
the contract that lays out what the
a
what,
job description in a
Fine.
sense.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, Kathy, is that something that we should take up at the Green Infrastructure Committee?
Maybe request for qualifications rather than
Yeah,
request for proposals.
yeah, yeah, it's more of an RFQ.
Right, which is a good way to streamline that kind of selection process.
Mhm.
We like to be on the other end of that, don't we, Ann?
Mhm.
Um, So is that
So,
something you could draft, Bill, quickly? Just something, or could you
I-
with
yeah.
Stephanie and see what she could help us, maybe help us actually, put pen to paper and get a general enough outline so that it covers the kinds of things we need in
Yeah.
social media work and website work and database management work.
I think that's the best way to utilize Stephanie's expertise. I think she would be very qualified to come up with a scenario.
Yeah, and by the way, I'm not suggesting that she would be the contractor. I think she could identify what it is we're looking for.
Right.
She's done
Right, yeah, that's what I'm, exactly. that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking.
Now, when is our Green Infrastructure Committee meeting? That's like in 2 weeks? We
The
have- we have-
3rd? December 3rd, so it's at the end of next week.
Oh, so that's next Friday. So,
Yeah,
okay.
so maybe we could reach out to her and say, we talked about what we talked about, that she was suggesting ways we could do better outreach and public participation. And could she help us draft a request for qualifications and
Yeah.
suggest people that we should reach out to?
Yeah, all right, I'll reach out to Stephanie and talk to her about it.
And we can talk about that and try and get it actually. Again, I think we were, I don't know how much our signs are going to cost, but it still should leave some money for this year. That we,
Well, I don't, so for some reason, I'm thinking 2,500. I mean, it's not a huge amount, but it might be enough is that?
to get a
I
start. Yeah,
mean, I don't know. And can we, in terms of process, reserve the funds from this budget and say, we're going to use these for this without, it has to be expended. So we'd have to have somebody online by the 31st of December. Okay.
Yep.
Well, let's see if we
that's why
can.
I'm trying to push that if we could
Yeah,
get,
sure. Well, I'll talk to Stephanie. It won't be this week, but I'll talk to her at the beginning, or I might.
if we could talk to her at the beginning of next week, and she could even just have a rough draft for us to talk about on the 3rd.
On the 3rd, yeah.
And maybe we could reach out to the 2 people we know and anybody else she thinks and just send it to them and see if we can get somebody that wants to do it, that we could sign them up.
I think-
So what would be helpful is if we can identify what funds we are going to have available so we can actually talk about what it is. And maybe we can even propose a number of hours we expect them to. I mean, I think that would be fair to say to people. That
Right.
do this number of hours in this period of time. Okay. All right, I'll get on this next week with Stephanie, if not before. And, by Friday's meeting, we'll have, hopefully if she's not away, we'll have communicated and gotten something in place. And she-
Okay. So since we don't have a December meeting, will everyone, David, what do you think? Can we have, can we send it out for email approval? If we have something after the meeting on the 3rd? Oops, you're muted.
That there was a fire truck that went by. Yes.
Oh,
we could-
must have been the one that was just out in front of our place. Sorry, David.
Yeah, we can
That's a lot
certainly
of the rugged, yes.
email approval of anything like that since we're not going to meet until January. Yeah, not a problem. All right. So it's going.
And preliminarily, you're on board with this process we're talking about?
Yes, Yes, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, wow, all right.
All right, so going on 20 of, we actually need to wrap things up here within the next couple of minutes. Is there anything we need to talk about in connection with the Downtown Plus plan, which is a new business item, or can that be deferred until our January meeting? I'm not sure what that pertains to.
Kathy asked me to share that with all of you, the presentation that Dave made. I'd circulated a link to watch the presentation, and then I believe there was a draft of the plan.
Yeah, I think this is instead of the did, since they got rid of the did. The downtown improvement development, I forget what it was called, but we always called it the did, so I forget what it.
Improvement District.
Downtown Improvement District.
Improvement district, that's what it is. So the city has a plan, they've gone out and done some public participation about it. And there was a presentation done for with the Berks Alliance. So I just wanted people to be aware of it and think about what issues we want to make sure they include as they're thinking about what to do going forward about the downtown district. And of course, we want to, we want to make sure they understand and think about complete streets in the downtown area and, the urban canopy and connectiveness and biking and walking and those key issues. So we do want to be involved. So that was just to give you a sense of what the city is thinking going forward they're going to do instead of the did that they discontinued.
Kathy,
Okay.
can I clarify something? There was a presentation that, I forget the name of the consultant group from Canada, I guess, that did a whole presentation of a downtown, plus
Yeah.
a
I think that's-
pretty broad-based analysis and then proposal. I mean, it's much bigger than replacing the did. I mean, this is actually a plan for development.
Right,
Rather,
right.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah, it's bigger than that, but it's part of that conversation that's going on.
Right.
So I thought
Yeah,
people might be interested in looking
I
at.
think you're right. I think maybe at the next meeting, there should be a sort of a summary of it. It's probably too long for all of us to watch. I did watch most of that presentation.
How long?
How long is it?
Yeah.
Probably about 45
About an
minutes.
hour, a little more.
I mean, it's
Oh.
long. I think there was some stuff that was exciting and infuriating. I feel like we reinvent the wheel every 5 years. But the other thing related to that is what the latest Berks Alliance presentation was, the transit-oriented development conversation, which in the same vein, I don't know where that's going to go. That's not actually something that the city is funding moving forward, but at some point we should be paying attention to that because they kind of overlap. That's development that's going to be mostly focused around the station, but it's anticipating train travel and then the development that will be generated and guided. At this point, it's not clear who's going to guide it, who's driving it, who's going to be on the train thing. So I think when we have the conversation about the Downtown Plus plan, we should probably talk about what was discussed in that presentation.
We could invite David to
Speak to both.
speak to both of those since they convene people to come talk to the community about it.
Yeah. Do you have his contact?
Alliance. Yes, I do have his contact information.
Oh, that would be good. I mean, maybe either the next meeting or the one after that, he should be.
So maybe on the January meeting,
Yeah.
put that on the agenda.
Yeah. And I think with both, I'm confident he can do a good job of distilling it down to something that will take
Yeah,
20
yeah,
minutes.
because he has to do that all the time. And
Right.
the whole purpose of the Berks Alliance is get business and the colleges and the
Right.
health institutions talking to each other
Right.
and aware of what's going on.
Yeah.
So yeah, I imagine, I'm sure he would be willing to do that. And the passenger and train stuff is actually getting very likely to happen.
Yeah,
They're making a 3-county authority to manage it. They were all in agreement about some basic important things. Amtrak's willing to take on, has it as part of their plan. The state has it as part of their plan. There's money in the infrastructure bill.
there's money in the bill there's money in the bill that got passed. It's not waiting for the
Yes,
next bill. It's there.
yes, in the infrastructure bill that got
and it's-
passed, yeah.
Right, and it's on Amtrak's map. Now, what John Weidenhammer said was at the presentation, and John's, I don't know, is he the chair of the Berks Alliance? And he seems to be
Yes.
driving
Yes, he
it.
is, president, I think. It's-
He wanted to make the point that this is not, at this point, dependent on the Amtrak money. I mean, that is gonna, and
No.
Amtrak's blessing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, I mean, as I understood, he couldn't say anything definitive, but he's saying it is looking more positive than at any time since 1981, when passenger rail service was suspended. Now, Michelle said in a chat that the Downtown Plus plan includes development around the train station, which it does. This was more, talking in a more general terms about the forces that might come to play if train travel does return, and that it's going to need to be corralled and managed in a way that we get what
I
we want.
think it's much farther reaching than the area that surrounds the train station. I think
Well, yeah, there's
it-
that too.
it'll affect not only Reading, it'll affect the surrounding communities. Like it will be far reaching and definitely not just centered on where the train is.
Yeah, and they talked about that too, that's part of what you need to consider, but that the heaviest, if you want to expand, transit oriented development is focused on walkable communities, trying to get, trying to put people in a position to be able to use transit. So
It speaks to the complete streets, and one of our main missions is to
right.
implement complete streets. So
Yeah, and I think if and when that starts to gel, I think we will be in a position, or we should be able to speak to it. We should speak to it as the it could be in 5 years we could have train service, so it'd be great.
All right.
Okay. and
All
that,
right, so we can.
All right, so we need to wrap this up.
We need to
Beth-
wrap up. Yep.
So do I. I need to run here. So we'll pick up with project updates next time to the extent needed. We obviously do not meet in December. Our next meeting is Tuesday, January the 25th. Be prepared for that meeting. That is our reorganizational meeting. So president, vice president, we need to be considering those in the next 2 months. Happy Thanksgiving to everyone. We will certainly see one another at subcommittee meetings over the course of the next couple of weeks. But thank you everyone for participating today. Have a great Thanksgiving. And we'll see one another soon.
all right, bye. Thank you.
All right, everyone.
Adjourn.
Have a good Thanksgiving, everybody.
Happy Turkey Day.